Welcome back to Vital MX. Welcome back to another podcast or YouTube show, depending on what platform you're watching this on. If you're watching, you can see the faces of two individuals sitting here. If you're listening, you're just going to hear two different voices. This is Mike Lindsay. Here's your host. I'm the content director of Vital MX. And then somebody who's a little bit newer to our staff, you might have seen him in some content. He usually has a helmet on for most of it, is Stephen Tokarski. He is our new product editor at large. And yeah, me and him are going to start doing this show on the regular, testing and tech here at Vital MX, presented by our fine friends at Yamaha Motor USA. We'll hear more from them later. But yeah, all the cool stuff. We're always getting to do our product tests, our bike tests, our project bikes, the stuff I get to see at the races for tidbits, the stuff we know that's going on with teams and what they're trying. It's all stuff that's fun to talk about. We get to dip into it a little bit in some of our content, but here is a place where we can just nerd out for a good 45 minutes, maybe an hour per episode, and just get to talk about it. And on top of that, also have an opportunity to answer your guys' questions. This is the first episode, so we don't have any. But if you'd like to submit some, you can throw them in the YouTube comment section. You can throw them on the Vital MX forum, or you can also just email them to me at mlindsay@vitalmx.com. Yeah, so basically we're going to cover a couple topics. We'll do some stuff like whether it's stories, stuff we've been involved in, stuff that we know, tips, tricks, things we're testing, and also get to learn a little bit more about you, my friend, in this one. We're both from SoCal, about the same age that I've seen you the whole time growing up in racing. I failed miserably early. We didn't go past amateurs. You made it farther. You made it to Supercross, and then I'm very glad to say that
I wouldn't say made it, but I did attempt Supercross.
You got to a Supercross. You started, I believe you whole shot and led a heat race, right?
Yes, not for long. I had 2 sprained ankles after just destroying myself at San Diego. So it was a rough run.
We have whole shot and led a Supercross heat race. That is still making it by most people's standards. Maybe not by your own, because I'm very glad to say you don't call yourself a retired Supercross racer.
No, I quit, and I am just a current testing guy.
There you go. So speaking of testing, so you get done racing SX. You, like most of us, you figure out, well, racing's not going to work out for me. What am I going to do next?
Yeah, I wanted to. So I actually got out of the motocross world for a couple years and did a normal electrical job and realized that this was, shoot me in my brain, miserable.
No offense to electricians.
No, everyone's a good job, but I spent so long riding dirt bikes and spending my life doing that I just felt like I wanted to try to stay in the industry somehow. So first I wanted to at least attempt Supercross because I got so close and then got hurt really bad. I dislocated my hip, broke my pelvis, getting ready for the 2013 or 2014 season after some good amateur years. So, was making decent money doing electrical, and about December, I decided I'm going to try to go race Supercross. So with a month to go, I got a bike, got everything dialed. I think I practiced Supercross for 3 days. And one day I crashed really good, so it was a lot of prep. Came in super ready for Supercross. And I did all right. I mean, for at least I could say I did it now. Yep. Made the night shows. Almost made a main at A2, but just didn't have the experience or the time ready for it. The whoops really killed me. I sucked in the whoops. But did that, and then still wanted to figure out somehow to stay in the industry. I was gonna end up racing outdoors, but I didn't do that because I hurt my wrist. So I just was kind of over keep hurting myself. But so at that point, I was doing YZ shoots from 2011 on through racing stuff, and I had gotten a call from the testing manager, Steve Butler, for one of the years before the new 450 came out. It's like 2015, 2016, and they needed some time on a bike. So I went out, rode the bike for them, just putting more time on the bike. I think it was for the racing guys, actually. Dino Dan and I went out. Mm-hmm. And just kind of got in touch with him, had him where I would tell him, like, hey, if you ever need any help, let me know. And then I started bugging him middle of 2017. After Supercross, like, hey, if you ever need any testing help, like, give me a call. 6 months, I kept bugging him, nothing really. And then got a call one day to come out to Racetown and rode with Travis Preston. And worked for about 6 months just on a day rate thing. Just kind of, he said, hey, we need help. We're super busy. And pretty much I was there full time from then on, and then became an employee. and was there until about the end of 2024.
Yeah. Now you're here with us doing the media gig.
Yeah,
Going to try a little bit of everything. We're deprogramming your mind. Get to try everything all the time now. Not that you didn't, Yamaha. You guys would test a little bit of everything, but now you really get to run around.
Yes, now I really get to try everything, spend a lot more time on other bikes, because when you're in an in-house testing job, the only job you're really focused on is making that manufacturer's bike better. So you might, yes, we have other bikes, we spent other time on other bikes, but the only goal was to see where it was against those current YZ that we were building on.
Yeah. So speaking of YZ, this is one of the most interesting stories I talked to you about, was how this ties into teams. So something that comes up all the time is, hey, such and such rider is switching teams and is going to secretly test the bike, or such and such rider is even going to stay at a team but wants to test such and such bike. So this goes back to 2022. Eli Tomac is in his first year at Star Racing.
Yes.
When Star Racing took over the Yamaha 450 program, he's killing it, but he's on a one-year deal. He had left Cowie pretty unhappy at that point in his career. We really didn't know how long he was going to continue, and he started this spree of one-year contracts. And in the middle of that, through that Supercross season, I ran a story that was basically, hey, Eli Tomac has not re-signed at Yamaha yet, and there's a reason why. And at that time, Yamaha was coming out with the all-new 450 for 23.
That you probably knew about somehow.
Well, I mean, we all know the product cycles. I always get in trouble for this shit. Some of it's so obvious. Yeah. But we knew there was a new bike coming, and not Eli was super happy at Yamaha at the time, super happy at the Star team. It was definitely a huge reset in his career. But it was also the simple fact of, if things didn't suit him because geometry was changing, certain things did he want to continue? I think he was also at a point hey, he's killing it that year. He'd also be good walking away at not being an R&D project the next year. But because of timelines and other things, it was a bit of holdup. Yamaha wants the man to re-sign. They want to get their new racehorse locked down in a sense and continue this program with Eli and build on that. But he also wanted to test the motorcycle.
Yes.
And that's where you guys come in. So the bike needed to get set up for Eli to go racing on. Or not to go racing on, sorry, to go do a test on. So how did that work in the middle of that Supercross season? How does something like that come together?
Yeah, so we had finished production testing of this bike back in December of 21. So it was getting through its stages of durability and becoming into pre-production. So there really wasn't a production motorcycle ready, but there was some prototypes, and the Japanese always have a race. They have the All Japan series over there, and they have their bikes that they modify and do stuff to. So they have what they call an OW bike, and they had one of those shipped over here with some modifications from the stock bike, suspension, a little chassis work, engine work, stuff like that. And we had a couple days of testing it beforehand on outdoors just to see how it was, make sure nothing broke, make sure it was okay for Tomac to go spend a day on it, because we had it all scheduled for him to go ride it on a Supercross track, which is not normal. Normally you do outdoor stuff, and they've never spent the bike. It doesn't get much time on Supercross during production development. Really gets no time. Back in the day, it did get some time. They did some crazy durability tests back in the day where they do 4 days of motocross and the last day on outdoors. Some stories I've heard. This is pretty crazy. But
I remember, I got a quick funny one. I'll really quickly. So my dad owned part of a rental company, used to have equipment across from the Yamaha track, and Vallejo that owned the track is a second family to us, all stuff. I remember as a little kid sitting across, and I've seen them test literally 85s and stupid stuff on the Supercross track. They would do a day of just launching them off jumps. I don't mean launch like ghost riding, but I mean,
those days are long gone.
I've seen them try everything on a Supercross track randomly for Yamaha. It's kind of funny.
Luckily, those days are long gone.
You don't think you would have liked that in your job?
No.
Whoops.
I still get anxiety even looking at a Supercross track, thinking, why did I even try? But so me, myself, Travis Preston, and we had Kyle Chisholm come in because he was at the time racing a Yamaha, was doing good in Supercross, and just wanted a current racer to come out. And we know he had a lot of experience. He'd been around for a long time. So us three went out for 3 days of outdoor testing. They also wanted us just to run through a little bit of some parts for their stuff back home. And after that, we had a day with Chisholm on the Supercross track to dial in suspension, put some different suspension on for there. Had him get it dialed to where he thought would be a good base package for Eli to go out and ride on. Obviously, it's not going to be set up perfectly for him, but just get it to somewhere in the ballpark where everything seemed okay and there was no problems, and it'd be good to go for Eli, because obviously they didn't want to have any issues with this all-new prototype. Eli goes out while he's winning the Supercross title. If something goes bad, that's not good on anyone's part. So then Eli came out, rode the bike. Within, I think, a few laps, he was going really fast on it. They almost had to have him slow down because they were like trying to tell him, like, relax, this is an all-new bike, like, you don't need to be sending it. And yeah, rest is history. He was came back in, pretty much said, yeah, we're good to go. We'll sign the contract, and yeah, he's still racing now.
I always think it's funny with riders. Like, I experienced this 2 years ago. Dylan Ferrandis, they do, kind of a hidden test with him with Phoenix Honda, and it's out at this track they rented in North Carolina, and I'm there with the owner of the team, David Eller. He's a very close friend of mine. And I remember driving the track, and he had asked me, he goes, how do you think we'll know if he wants to do the deal? And I'm like, you'll know in 4 laps.
Yeah.
Like, a guy of that caliber, there's stuff they're going to want to continue to test her, but like, the bones of what's going on, the feeling they're looking for, they'll know pretty quickly if it's going to happen or not. And I remember watched him, he did a roll lap, he did a couple quick laps, and then he comes in and he just immediately asks, could we change this or this? And made a little tweak on the suspension with Ziggy and the crew from FC that was there. And he rolled back off, and I remember walking back down the fence line. So what do you think? I said, I think you're on. Like, the dude's attitude was like, he wasn't like, they don't just come and go, oh my God, I'm so happy. It's just like, you can just see in their face like they're happy to ride a motorcycle. And it's like, okay, you're probably going to have to figure out this contract this evening. And sure enough, that's where I win. I think a comparison that would actually be Ken Roxon when he was doing his tour of bikes a couple off seasons ago.
That was cool.
That same thing happened. So he had tested, and done some races with what is now the Quad Lock Honda team, which was Firepower at the time. He went and rode the Yamaha Club MX for a day. And then he had Mitch Payton build him 2 complete race spec Cowies, and that seemed to be the default of maybe what he was going to do. But in the meantime, Dustin Pipes and the HEP crew had been bugging him, like, come try our bike, come try our bike. Coincidentally, Chisholm, also involved with doing a base spec there at the time.
See?
So,
the guy knows his stuff.
Moral of the story, if you want to sign a high-profile rider, have Kyle Chisholm come ride it first, and your chances increase dramatically.
That's a good point.
But same thing, I know that Kenny, and I think Kenny was pretty admitted at the time. He went there kind of as a courtesy, like, definitely like, hey, I have Suzuki roots, this would be cool, but the HEP team definitely wasn't viewed the same way then as it is now. But same thing, I know he just went and rode it, and it was just a feeling. He clicked and pretty much immediately called off he never even rode those PC Cowies. They ended up selling them both. I know who bought one of them, and I know the guy that bought the other one.
Really?
Yeah, they ended up both getting sold. Like, just that, those guys, like, it takes a couple laps and they know if they're in or if they're out.
Yeah, I've learned in my days of testing at Yamaha that your best impression is normally your first impression. Yeah. So the more you start chasing it, normally what they first give you is normally the best thing that you feel. And especially with top level riders like that, it's pretty easy for them to feel quickly whether they like it or not.
I think that's actually, this is a little bit of a sidestep, but I always come up with that with shootouts. I know there's an argument of like, oh, you guys could put more time on bikes in shootouts or less. But I think, like, yes, if you're looking at things like durability and how you can modify them and set them up better, but if you're asking me like what a bike feels like, the first impression is almost always right. Yes. I can ride a bike for, it's a bad bike, but I think a lot of guys in testing that do it well are like this. You can ride a bike for 2 laps and tell I can tell you 90% of what I think of the bike in 2 laps. Yeah. We went to the Ducati intro like that. The Ducati was very different, but 2 laps I could tell you 90% of what I said in my video. I learned more throughout the day, and there's little quirks or little positives or things you learn about how it reacts more as you adapt, but your base opinion is formed pretty quickly. Yeah,
especially like when we're just doing a part change or something, we do 2 laps at a time. Yep. That's all we did, because that's all you need.
Yep.
And and normally... Yeah, obviously your first impression is going to be the best, and then people start thinking about it more and start trying to, and then it kind of their opinion changes a little bit, but really their base opinion is what they normally feel is the best.
Yeah. So on to our second topic for this episode is actually you suggested this one, and at first I kind of didn't want to because I laughed at the comments the last time I did something. So a couple months ago, we did a scoop versus 34 versus 53. So we did the Dunlop MX-14 scoop tire versus a 34 and a 53 lap time challenge at GH. And we did it through multiple times of the day. And I think the results were a bit shocking in a way, like how...
I was shocked, actually. Well, thank you,
fix
sir.
your mic. You're welcome. So after that, like, there was the end of what we did of the test of like, hey, let's just see what the lap times are. Let's see how it is throughout a day. And it's a single sampling test. You could do it on more varying terrains, different things, but we did it. It was fun. We came out with a pretty gnarly conclusion of like how much your one lap pace can really be on a scoop. Since then, as we've seen in pro racing, like last year, the conversation started pretty heavy about guys running it, and we were talking about kind of scenes like, oh, who are going to be the scoop guys? By the time we got to outdoors, everybody's a scoop guy. Like, there's only a handful of motos or races this year guys won't run it. So I feel like it's gone because it got talked about a lot. It got a little bit beaten to death, and then at High Point, I actually asked a lot of riders post-race, what do you think of everybody still running these? Because going into the second moto at High Point, we had a lot of rain. We were hitting the base. I thought more guys were going to switch, but so many guys are do or die because it used to be they switched the scoop tire at a certain point, like if it was a sandy race or a certain track, but they didn't ride it during the week. Now everybody rides it all week long, so they're so used to it they won't come off of it. And I asked guys like RJ Hampshire and Jalik Swole, and they were very adamant, like, hey, I almost think they need to be banned because of like what they do to the track and different things. And I had some people in the comment section be like, this is ridiculous. Like, some people were like, this is beating a dead horse. Yeah. Then I laughed. There was a whole nother segment on Gypsy Tales this week. So I've seen it on other pods, keeps coming up. So I think we're going to discuss it, but from a little bit of a difference. Like, let's talk about why is it that everybody keeps running it based on our tests? Like, what we kind of noticed, like, why is it the guys are running it? And then, okay, yeah, pros are running it. Is that a good or a bad thing? And kind of back to our original test, like, should consumers run it? Like, why would they consider one?
For me, I really believe the number one reason they run it is starts. Yeah. If you want to get a good start, you have so much more forward drive with the scoop tire. It just digs in and gets you going a lot quicker down a straightaway than the normal tire. So I think that's the number one for most guys. Yeah. And then obviously it just gives you better traction driving out of corners. For me, I just felt like I was going physically faster down straightaways, and I didn't lose that much cornering performance. Yes, it is a little more difficult to have at lean. You have a little more or a little less contact feeling because of the bigger tread, but I think it's the more performance gains you get with drivability and traction feeling makes it just a no-brainer for most guys.
Yeah. What do you think, like, okay, if you were, let's say you're trying to battle somebody, you got a competitor that's on the scoop, you're on a standard, like, intermediate to soft tire, like, take the Dunlop example, you're on 14 versus 34, you're on the 34, your competition's on a 14. Even though you could maybe be better mid-corner on 34, like, how big of a difference is it on drive exit where, like, hey, could somebody make almost more of a mistake, and can they use the tire to sort of defend their position almost in a way, like outdrive you?
Yeah, I think you easily could. You have less effort doing it, so you don't have to put as much rider input into it like in the corners. So if the guy's on normal tire, he's going to have to really use more energy hitting his corners, making his marks right, where the guy could be a little more lazy in the corner and then just get on the gas and gain that back in the straightaway and roost them more. Yeah, because the scoop tire does hurt. I mean, all roost hurts, but the scoop tire is really another thing.
I've seen some guys this year, I mean, wearing unstressed tilt take on, they look like they have been blasted a whole moto. I feel for the dudes in outdoors right now. The other thing I found interesting with it, though, is also like the little bit of adaptation in the way you ride it. Because if you try to ride it like a completely standard tire as the conditions go away, you'll end up with little sketchy moments on like corner exit. Like, you definitely can't trust as heavy lean angle. Yes. So I do find that part of, like, I remember there's a couple 250 riders that are on smaller teams coming this year. Like, I remember warning some of them in Supercross, like, hey, if you're considering scoop, like, I think you have to ride it all week long because you need to be ready for those adaptation points. Definitely. Like the way you stand it up. What are like 2 or 3 standouts to you of like actually how you change your riding when you're on one?
Well, first is scrubbing. I like to scrub. I like to slide my rear wheel off some jumps, and you have to be a little more. You have to pay attention a little more because it has more grab in it, so you can't break it as loose. So that's one thing. You do feel the bumps a little more. So
Yeah.
it depends on, I try to find a little smoother line, and I have to be more aware of my lean angle and how much I'm pushing at lean, because I can lose balance a little quicker.
Yeah.
It doesn't have as much of a contact feel when I'm especially laid over in a corner.
Where's that comfort go? Like, why does it have less comfort?
I think because of the bigger tread and maybe the carcass.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what
I think
the carcass
from the Dunlop
is.
guys told me the carcass is stiffer.
Yeah.
Because they don't want, the idea of the tire in sand is you want to scoop to keep its shape more, so they don't want as much compression in the carcass. Now, when we talk about, like, okay, let's say you're entering corner, you're on lean angle on entry, it'll skip out a little more. Do you feel like that's as much the knobby shape, or because do you see that's more because the carcass is stiffer and it doesn't absorb as much? Like,
I think it's more the carcass for me. Yeah. It's because the knobby, at some point it could flex more because it has a bigger tread, so it has a little more flexibility. So yeah, I think it's more of the carcass for me.
So Joe Blow, Weekend Warrior, comes up to you while you're testing at GH and season, asks you, like, legitimately, should I run one? What would your answer be?
I think it's more based for a consumer and a slower guy, because most guys come into a corner and point and shoot,
Yep.
The older you get, the less you're at lean angle and pushing more aggressive. So I think they would benefit more from a scoop tire, because they come in more straight up, hit the corner kind of leaned over, not as much, and then get up straight and get going again. So I think they would benefit from it more than even a professional racer.
Now, what do you think of the whole argument? Like, again, I asked, like, Jalik and RJ, and part of their reason for not running it, like, saying, like, hey, I mean, Jalik straight up said ban it. RJ was like, find out some way to get rid of it. Their reason was mostly, like, the continued conversation we have around, like, four strokes, 450s, faster bikes, tearing up tracks more. They had some comments about the tracks tearing up, but they also had some comments about, like, when it goes wrong on one, like, it can go a little bit wrong or bigger, just because it can skip out at a different point. So
Like Jordan Smith last weekend off the lip of that jump.
Oh my God, that was a funny example of that, because, like, yes, spinning on corner eggs up a jump face is a thing, but the amount.
Oh my God, that was insane.
I
think the scoop tire might have been a little bit of that reason.
Well, that's what I say when you think of it. So, like, I think this even goes back to, like, okay, reason guys are running scoops. Like, people talk about grates, they talk about footstills, they talk about your launch maps, they talk about your whole shot devices. Like, some people are just like ban it all.
Well, I think if we're gonna start banning, we need to start with the starting blocks.
The starting block.
Yes, don't get me started on that. But I believe
you do not have the legs of somebody that I do.
I have pretty short legs as well. So
What's your inseam?
I don't know.
A 30
Oh.
to maybe a 28. I got the legs of, like, Alex Martin, not quite Alex, Jeremy Martin. I got the legs of Jeremy
I think
Martin.
not banning starting blocks, but banning, like, the ones Deegans are running right now is
and
insane.
Sexton, the ones
with
they're
the
touching
lip
with the
and they're
pegs.
locked down to the thing. Like, come on. Like, are they training wheels? Like, let's I feel like, yes, you should be able to run a standard size one, but yeah, I don't think you need to start banning tires before some other stuff that's going on in motocross right now.
Stevie is of the old school is cool club at the moment.
Yes and no. I'm all for moving forward, but some of those starting blocks are insane.
Yeah. The tire one's tough for me, because one thing we miss in moto a little bit is that compared to other motorsports, tires are a big deal in other motorsports, like strategies, what you run, what you don't run. And that's like the scoop a year or two ago was very much, okay, I'm going for the start, it's soft, but I know I'm going to sacrifice. And I mean, part of this is hats off to, we talk a lot about Dunlop because of the US Series, but also hats off to Pirelli, because their scoop in GPs has been very popular for this for a long time. They have both built a scoop tire, quote unquote, that does work fairly well across the range, where now it's like, hey, it isn't that big of a disadvantage in a lot of places, so F it, I'm going to take all the advantages that come with it. That's cool to me. It's kind of funny, because on one hand, I see guys complain, like, get rid of the scoop, like I said, I see that ban, but it's like, okay, basically riders have found a tire that gives them the optimal amount of performance. It's almost the same argument as somebody having a works tire, I guess. Like, hey, they're just picking what works the best.
Yeah.
I wish there was more options, but unless the other tires perform in a way that outperform that, which we ran into, like a lot of people, it's really changed, again, how good it works late in the day, because we ran the GH. When we ran first thing in the morning, you were 2 seconds a lap faster on the scoop than anything.
Yep.
We got to the middle of the day when lines are perfect, traction was at its optimal, the track hadn't gone super rough yet, but had more lines, like the tires squeeze, like the lap times got a lot closer again.
Yes.
But then shockingly, you would think, okay, like GH is pretty hard packed.
Yeah.
Pretty slick, no real ruts. You're banking off random stuff. And we went back to being, immediately we had hills, we had Talladega, we had other things that help us straight on traction, but we go back to being 2 seconds out of lap faster. A lot of your national tracks have big elevation change. They have big open sections.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like maybe, let's say you're riding your local vet track that's a very tight layout, a lot of little jumps, not a lot of big open areas to accelerate. I could see hard pack at the end of the day. Like, yeah, maybe you're not going to get the advantage of being on scoop, but I get why, again, the guys in the Nationals are doing it. So my only counter is if people think to a point there is a danger aspect to it, but I can't see any other reason to argue banning one. It's just a tire. It's optimized for performance, and otherwise, you could argue, cool, ban them. Everybody's just going to still go run the same. Whatever the next best tire is, everybody's still just going to run it.
And I think the reasoning for it is that it's making the track too gnarly. When I think that it's motocross. There's got to be some tough parts to it. It's gonna get rough. It's gonna get gnarly.
Yeah.
I think if you're really worried about it, take a little bit more of a break and groom those sections a tiny bit more.
Or I think the counter that's always been there with more of the U.S. series the past couple of years is, and I know we've gotten better at, but like you go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the tracks weren't that deep. Like you legitimately saw dust, you legitimately saw hardpack. Then we went to this we got really deep, a lot of mulch, a lot of water, got very one lined, and I could see those tires would dig into that deeper, make the holes bigger, make the ruts bigger because they're just moving more material. I will say the sport has made on the U.S. side a conscious effort the last 2 years, I've noticed, to try to lessen that, but it isn't always perfect. Like, example, Redbud, I think it was going into one of the first motos. I heard one of the higher up person at MX Sports kind of getting after them. If it's like, hey, you need to tell these guys, they basically said that the local track crew overwatered.
Yeah.
And they were like, this is too much. We don't want to go this direction. We don't want it to be this deep, this sloppy, this messy. We want it to be.
Well, we see better racing when there's not as deep of ruts. People can move around, they can be more aggressive.
Yeah.
So I think, part of it is track prep firsthand before you start banning a tire. And I mean, they're just looking for the best advantage they can get out there.
Yeah. I'm going to have to cut right here. I'm trying to remember what was going to be our third thing we were going to talk about. Oh, hydro versus clutch.
Yeah.
Okay. Last, let's do our third and final talk. So it comes up what you said earlier about Tomac and the whole cable, and I laugh because even the Yamaha 450 just gets announced, and people are like, "Oh, it's got a hydro on it, this and that." Like, it's got a hydro now. That's why Eli's leaving. Blah blah blah. And I admit it. Like, I am a hardcore and have been a hardcore cable guy. Like, it's always been a comment in our tests. Like, hey, I prefer the feel, I prefer the usage, and I say that. I'm not much of a clutch person. I can ride a 450 or 250 for 50 hours without putting a clutch in it. I don't abuse the clutch. I don't drag it a lot. For the situations I need it, though, I've always kind of been like, hey, I don't like the on and off of hydros, or at least what they were at one point. I like the cable feel. Even being involved, like Yamaha was outside of now the Suzuki 450 will be the only 450 left with a cable. You guys kind of hung out for the longest.
Well, they're working on that,
Probably. I don't know. They're working with making a new RMZ 450 next 5 years. Who knows? But yeah, with that, like, I imagine over the years you guys have probably almost every generation of bike retested. Why is you think the hydro being accepted now?
I think a little bit of market complaints. People really want it. It's just another marketing topic that they can push. Mm-hmm. I think it's just mainly that, like, people in the market really want it. They want to keep you involving the bike, and the cable clutch it's not bad, but most people do prefer a hydro clutch now. And We did try to put it, or they wanted to put it on the 23, but it just wasn't good enough at that point, and it still had that very small disengagement to engagement feeling. It was difficult to control. The cable clutch was better, and they kept working on it, and really wanted to push for putting it on this year's bike, and they brought it out, and it was really good.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the best hydro clutch I've ever ridden.
What, like, when you say it's better, like, again, what people's thought is on a hydro, like, why is it better? Why has it gone better?
I think it's just, it has a better feel to it, where before it was very grabby and difficult to control, and you had this very small window of where you actually had disengagement to engagement feeling, and now it feels more like a cable clutch, and you don't have to adjust it, which is nice. But I don't think, unless your name's Justin Barsha or Eli Tomac, you really shouldn't be destroying a 450 clutch because of the power it has. But people do, because they ride a gear taller, use the clutch instead of shifting. And I think it's just more of a better feel now, where it's easier to ride, easier to control your RPMs, and it has a lighter lever pull for me. And they did a really good job with this hydro clutch.
Another thing I think one consideration with a hydro is a bit of it also has to do with like clutch wear and clutch pack. Basically, what's the word I'm looking for? How much clutch pack pressure you can have.
Yes.
Because like that's a big one. Is like for a long time the old school thought was like, hey, I'm burning out my clutch really easy. Let's just keep throwing stiffer clutch springs in this thing. That's the go-to if you're burning out your clutch. But then at a certain point it becomes too much to use on a cable. As brands have moved hydro more, I think it'd be interesting is if you took some of the brands that have gone exclusively hydro and how they've adapted their clutches since. If you try to throw, like you just mangled a cable system back into it, how stiff the pull would be, because they've been able to get away with higher pack pressures, which allows you less clutch slippage. And that's not even for just riders straight up using the clutch. That's just these bikes keep putting out more power.
Yes.
And so let people remember, the clutch is actively being worn and torn and used in just the operation of the bike as it accelerates. Like, not just because you're not on the lever doesn't mean the clutch isn't experiencing heat and usage of some form. So by having that higher pack pressure, for some bikes that also can help by quite a bit. But like I said, I mean, you guys probably test, like, there gets to a point you can keep going, oh, we'll burn out clutches, let's just make it stiffer, and then you're on the cable and you're like, I can't. It's not only stiff, but because it's stiff, it's also hard to actuate properly because you're like really jumpy with it on release because it's trying to release.
Well, yeah, like when they updated the clutch for 23, it was very similar, if not the same, to KTM's clutch. But we still couldn't get the wear life of the KTM clutch over time. That clutch lasted a long time, and I believe that was because of the power that the YZ puts out. So they did do a little update to that to put some holes in the clutch basket to cool it off with a little more oil flow. And if you did add a stronger spring, it did help that a little better, because there was a little bit of a little lag in the clutch after a while. You get a little bit of slippage. But yeah, I think the hydro it's the way of the future now. They got it. They've worked on it a long time. I still prefer a cable clutch. I don't know. I love a cable clutch, but this is the closest cable clutch feel I've had on a hydro.
Yeah. Which our next side test will be, let's see where we're at. We're in July. We're about the new bike testing season. The YZ450 is the most updated bike this year. There's some decent changes to the beta. We have the Ducati 450, which I rode. You haven't gone to yet, but we'll have it in maybe about 4 to 5 weeks, I think. And I'm just trying to think our 450s this year. Honda, no changes. KX 450, no changes. Suzuki 450, no changes. I can't say that with a straight face. I just can't anymore. I'm so sorry.
It's still a decent bike, though.
Yes, it is.
For the average person, you can't get on that bike and complain. But, I mean, a little change here and there would be nice.
As we learned, though, Suzuki 450, parts are much more expensive.
I know, that's insane.
I made him work on, there's a feature, we'll talk about it a little bit in our next episode, but we're publishing a feature in the next day or so that's actually all the OEM parts prices for your regular wear and tear items on 450s. There's some shocking stuff in there.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Very interesting. It definitely shows where some OEMs make their money versus they don't. But yeah, new this year, YZ450 heavily updated, Beta 450 bit updated, Ducati all new machine. Haven't seen. I gotta look if Triumph. I mean, Triumph just came out the 450 as an earlier release, so I don't think that's changing at all. It will just see a standard version of the RC, so standard bars, couple things like that coming from them. So maybe a little bit of a lighter year than usual.
Yeah, but you got to give credit to Yamaha. Our sponsor. They do an amazing job recently of listening to market feedback and complaints and making their changes based off of that.
Yeah.
So like obviously I used to do the media stuff at Yamaha as well, so I'd go out to all the shootouts and be like the tech guy for so I've heard a lot of hundreds, if not thousands, of people's opinions on the bike, and definitely from 23 till 25, the number one complaint I heard about the engine was it's too fast.
Yeah.
So now with them going to a little bit of sound regulation, trying to pass that 109 dB, the bike is a little more smoother, easier to control, but it's still probably one of the fastest bikes out.
Yeah.
But just a little more manageable. And then another complaint was the chassis was a little less stable at speed versus the 2022. That's a whole nother argument we could get into about those bikes. That'd be a good test someday. But I think this bike is definitely getting back to that 2022 stability while still having really good cornering performance and lightweight feeling.
Well, I'll take your word for it. I haven't rode it yet, but we will soon.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away, but right off the bat from the first test, they did a really good job.
Yeah.
There's a couple test riders. One test rider, Kenny-san from Japan. He's been doing it for 30 years or so, and he knows a YZ better than anyone in the world. And he really nailed this chassis. So, I think a lot of people are going to be really excited with this bike.
Well, that's it for this episode. Like I said, big thing is we'll have topics every week, but if you have questions, if you have stuff you want to hear us discuss, if you have stuff you want us to dig into, again, forum, YouTube comments section, throw them at my email, something. As always, thanks for watching. Give us a like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on podcast, if you don't already subscribe to our podcast network, please do. You'll get this podcast, plus our post-race show, plus all of our post-race interviews, and all the other good stuff we do on that platform as well.